True or false? Showing up at your local fighting game event means you automatically make tons of friends. We're gonna be talking about all that and more, but first, coffee. Now today's coffee is actually Colombia Supremo. Now I've had these beans before, the Colombia Supremo. I can't remember exactly how they tasted. Maybe this is the one that was a little spicy. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe that was a different one. Honestly, I can never remember. In my head, all the coffees just kind of gel together into one big blend. I call it the has-been blend. So really, the reason I wanted to talk about this is that recently I have decided to start showing up in Tokyo, here in Japan, at local fighting game events. I was just like, wait a minute, this thing that I've been hearing about on the internet, this FGC, whatever this is, I can actually be part of this? And it never really, occurred to me to, properly go out and search for these people myself. And mostly, I think it was because I was actually a little bit, scared. What if nobody wants to play against me? Or what if I'm just really bad at the game? Or, I don't know, I was just afraid that I wasn't gonna make any friends, and so I was a little bit nervous about it. Anyway, let's grind! So I was quite concerned about the fact that I probably wouldn't make any friends. Probably for that reason, for a number of months, I kept putting it off. I was like, maybe I'll go, maybe I won't go, maybe I'll go, maybe I won't go. What if I show up and I just lose and everyone's pissed off that I'm not, even worth fighting against? And so the first one I went to was the BlazBlue Cross Tag local, which was in sort of East Tokyo. And it was alright. And I had a few matches, but honestly, I was way out of my depth. I played maybe 4 or 5 matches, and then I spent the rest of the time just kind of chatting to people or watching other people play. And then I went to another one, which is on the sort of, I don't know, I think it was West Tokyo, where the Red Bull Gaming Sphere is. And I had a very different experience, because I think now that I had my first experience with going to a local event, I knew kind of what to expect. I knew that it wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be just people showing up who've never played the game before. So I was like, I'm going to practice. So I practiced a little bit. And then I went to this event at Red Bull. And actually it went so much better, because actually I finally discovered that there were people who are complete beginners at the game. And so it also depends on what venue you go to. Some places have people who are just showing up after work who've never played the game before, they've just heard about it. They don't own a PlayStation, or they don't own the game. There was a beginner, intermediate, and a sort of advanced zone, so at least you knew which area to sit in. So while I was at Red Bull Gaming Sphere, I was asked oh, do you play any other fighting games? And I was like, oh yeah, well I also play a bit of Street Fighter 5, I went to the Tokyo Game Show for that. He's like, oh well, you should totally come to the Street Fighter 5 Weekly, which is actually happening tomorrow. They have a sort of fortnightly event that happens for BlazBlue Cross Tag, and a weekly event on Thursday, which happens for Street Fighter 5 at the exact same venue. And so I was like, oh yeah, well I'll definitely come and check that out, because honestly I've been playing a bit more Street Fighter recently than I've been playing of Cross Tag since I was going to the Tokyo Game Show for that. Let me get the water. The Street Fighter event was a slightly more stressful experience. There were 3 setups for the beginner zone. It was really crowded compared to the BlazBlue Cross Tag, obviously because there's a lot fewer people playing Cross Tag. But at Street Fighter 5, there's so many people playing on the pro setups, and there's only 2 setups for the intermediate advanced zone, and only 3 setups for the beginner zone. But what I found stressful about the situation was I didn't really understand how to get into the match, because there wasn't a very proper queuing system. It's not like you actually join a queue. You'll just join this massive cloud of people standing behind the setups, and then once someone stands up, either a really slippery person will kind of slip in front of you, or if you kind of make the motions I'm gonna sit down and take the next match. If you've never shown up to the event before, you don't really know the culture, so you're kind of looking around and seeing, what do other people do? And maybe I'm just unusual in that, more than other people, I just really don't want to step on people's toes or something. I just don't want to get in the way. But eventually it got to the point where I figured out, okay, if you stand vaguely behind the one, you're standing directly behind this setup, then when those people finish, both of them will stand up, because in the beginner zone, both people have to get off the setup, and then 2 new people will come and sit down. I'm trying to put about 3 or 4 separate events into one single entity. Essentially what I'm trying to say is I was very nervous about going to a local fighting game weekly event before, and now that I've actually been, I finally understand kind of how to navigate it. And yes, it is a little bit nervous at first. And I think there is some sort of thing about these YouTube videos that makes it look like as soon as you show up, everyone's going to have their arms open, they'll be like, hey, join us, we are community. But it's actually not quite like that. From when I went to this Red Bull event, it felt a bit more like okay, these are people who want to play Street Fighter, and we need a place where we can all do it together. And that's why the event exists. There's not like a place where you can sit and have coffee, and it's not like there's... Oh, I mean, there are sofas, but it hasn't been set up for the reason of like meeting other people who play. The reason is to play fighting games. That is the main reason that we're here. And that's very, very clear to me. And so when you go, people don't automatically want to be your best friend and say, hey, let's switch, details on WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and all that. And hey, what are your details? It really is, hey, do you want to have a battle? Okay, let's sit down. Let's have a battle. Okay, I won, or I lost and you won. And we find that out. Then we stand up and, you might talk or you might not talk. It really depends. But it's clear that people aren't showing up just to make friends. The main point is to play the game. But that doesn't mean that you don't make friends as well. It's really felt like the reason we are friends is to talk about getting better. It's not like, oh my god, I've always wanted to meet other people who play this game. It really feels like just a natural progression of the arcade. We just need a place to go and test our skills. And so I feel like the main way that you will meet people is when you're watching a match. You may like say, oh, do you want to do a match together after this? And they'll be like, yeah, okay, let's sit down. Sit down, you'll have your match. When you've had your match, you'll stand back up. He may say, or she may say, what you were doing wrong and what you can change, stuff like that. Take this off here. Alright, time to try some of this Colombian Supremo in my NihongoGamer cup, which I'm now holding in a very precarious angle, which means I may drop it. And I've made a little bit too much as well. No, it's perfect. I made just the right amount. Okay, that was really dangerous, and I should stop holding it like this. Oh, it tastes like Mr. Beaver's dam. Right before they go to fight the White Witch of Narnia. Mr. Beaver! So essentially, my thoughts are a little bit mixed up. Because I've been to like 3 or 4 events recently. I'm trying to condense them all into a single video. Now, I can definitely see that there are people who are really good friends, and they're like being very jovial with each other. So clearly, that is happening. But on the, it really does feel on the base of it that the reason we are here is because Street Fighter V is not in the arcades, and BlazBlue Cross Tag is not, BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle is also not in the arcades, and we need a place to play it. And so, fortunately, a rich company like Red Bull has decided to actually make it possible. So they're advertising their name because the Red Bull the Red Bull logo is in the background when they take pictures, stuff like that. And essentially, what I feel has been the most valuable takeaway from this experience is not that, yes, you can make friends playing fighting games, but essentially that practicing offline is really, really important. So I recently got into fighting games maybe like early last year when Ultra Street Fighter 2 came out on the Switch. And then, I progressed onto Street Fighter 5, ended up playing BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, Soul Calibur came out, Dragon Ball Fighters came out. Been playing all these games, but mostly playing them all online, right? And so the experience when you play online, it's not really, really different, okay? Honestly, playing Street Fighter 5 offline versus online, I can't even really tell how big a difference there is in terms of lag. Like, I found that there's very little lag when I play here in Japan anyway, so it's not like, whoa, playing offline is just massively, massively different in terms of lag. That is different, but the bigger difference was playing with a human person next to you. Now, I've mentioned this in previous videos before, but the first thing that really caught me off guard, since I don't play online very often, is that when you press the buttons, they can really hear you press them. When they fall over, they'll start doing this. Start mashing the button. And I don't know if they're faking it on purpose, or maybe they're just doing it because they don't realize I can hear it. But when they're mashing, you can go in and do what they call like a meaty. That's not something that can happen when you play online, obviously, because you have no idea whether they're mashing. You can predict, you can kind of try and read whether they're going to mash the buttons, but it's a very, very different experience. That really is probably the major difference, and the reason why I'm glad that I've started going to like real life events where we play and meet up in real life to play fighting games. And I'm not going to say that it's the be-all and end-all of fighting games. I'm not going to say that I'm going to stop playing online. I get my kicks from just playing the game in general. So I'll play it online, I'll play it offline, play it with friends, play it at the arcades, play it at these local events. It doesn't really matter where I'm playing it. I still like the game for the game, but this extra aspect of playing offline with a human person next to you, who you can see is getting visibly upset when you win, or is staying really, really calm and you're getting visibly upset, and then you're like considering that. All of that it's really become clear to me, like that is a really important, fun aspect of the game that I wasn't getting from playing it online rather. If you've never been to a local event to play fighting games, and you're kind of nervous about it, then I want to say that even though I've been doing this on YouTube, I feel like I know exactly how you feel. I was really nervous. I didn't want to get in anybody's way. I didn't want to like tap anyone on the shoulder and say, hey, do you want to take the next match? I didn't want to like start a conversation after the match and go, okay, so can you like tell me what I did wrong? I wasn't sure if I was going to be sounding incessant or whatever. I didn't want to bother people. But that all changes after you go. Even if on the first day that you go, you don't play anything. I'm fortunate in that when I went to my first cross tag event, I already knew Goose there, so I was already chatting to someone. But then eventually, obviously, Goose had other people that she wanted to go off and play with. I was at this point where I thought, okay, either I can just sit here and wait till Goose comes back to play me, or I can actually challenge some other people. And so on my first day, I did challenge some other people, but it would be totally fine if you didn't. If you go to a weekly event, you just want to see what the culture is like, see how people get matches. Do they just kind of push themselves to the front, or do they kind of stand in an orderly queue? You just gotta like feel it out. So if you don't actually play the game the first time you go, I wouldn't consider that a failure. I would consider it like a really important first step. And then maybe the second time you go, you can look for an empty seat, sit down, and all you have to say, I don't know what you say in the West, but in Japan, you kind of sit down and you just kind of look over at them and say like, Taisen shimashouka, or Taisen shite mo ii desu ka? You just like, can we have a battle? And once you've got that phrase in your head, then you know what to say. I feel like half the nervousness came from, oh my goodness, when I show up and look at my opponent in the eye, what am I gonna say? Like, I think that's like half the scariness of it. I feel like it doesn't matter if you're speaking a foreign language. I think even if you're speaking your native tongue, it's still a little bit nerve-wracking to look at the person you want to beat. You want to play a game against and beat. And say something. But I don't push it. We play the game, we both stand off the setup. I don't start harassing them with questions about like what I did wrong. Take a quick breather, breathe in, breathe out. And if they're still standing next to me, clearly they're not running away because they want to get away from me as fast as possible, I'll be like, oh, so you're using so-and-so character. It looks like they're really, really strong and really fast. And at that point, after you've made a little small talk about their character, they'll probably say something about yours. They'll be like, oh yes, and it looks like you're using Naoto and Merkava. Like those characters are pretty tough, aren't they? And actually, as a result of a conversation like that, even though that's pretty much as far as it went, I was like, true, they are tough. Maybe I'll go back to Ruby or something. Maybe I'll go back to a slightly more straightforward character that I understand how to use. And that was the end of that conversation. It really didn't go any deeper than that. But that's all I really needed to know. And then conversely, people who I didn't even fight against, people who just happen to be English speakers who are here in Japan as well. I was like, oh, hey, I heard you guys speaking English. Can I just kind of nosy in on your conversation? And they're like, yeah, man, yeah, join us. I think one of the main takeaways that I'd like to leave in this video is that you may feel nervous or unsure about showing up to a real life event to play video games. And the main reason may just be you're kind of nervous, you don't know what it's going to be like. But the truth is, there's like at least 100 different reasons why a person might be nervous about going to an event. If for example, let's say you go to church, you may be nervous about going to some other church that you've never been to. Or let's say that you play tennis, you may be nervous about showing up at a club and being the weakest person in the team. When you stream online, there may be 0 people watching you, but you don't see it. But like, in real life, there's so many things about real life which just makes everything a little bit more nerve-wracking. I just want to say that now that I've been through it, I totally understand where those fears can come from. For going to a local fighting game event, you may be 1, nervous that nobody talks to you. 2, nervous that even if you strike up a conversation with someone else, they may not want to talk to you and they'll want to try and get away from you. 3, you won't know what to say when you sit down and like have a match. Even if it's your native tongue, you may not be able to get the words out like, do you mind if we play? I don't want to get in your way, but can we have a match? You may be 4, scared that people are going to get bored after playing you because you're too weak, because that's essentially one of my bigger fears. I was like, wow, maybe I should just practice a lot before I go to an event. It's like, the real takeaway that I took away from this experience is that even if you don't own the game, just show up and it will all just handle itself from there. I won't promise you that on day 1 everyone's going to be your best friend and help you through it, but you won't know unless you go. And I found out from going that 1, I'm a lot weaker than I thought I was, but 2, there are people showing up who don't even know what the game is. Today is the first day they're trying it. Most of them, a lot of these people are saying, oh, so-and-so senpai told me that I should come down to this thing, and that's why I'm here. I don't really know anything about Street Fighter, but hey, today I'm going to choose a character and play it. I'm like, oh, awesome. I'll tell you everything I know. And then the real joke is that anyone who I think is kind of my level or weaker right now, probably within a couple weeks they'll be stronger than I am. Which is another different conversation entirely. Probably I'm going to be changing the way that I do my YouTube, my streams, and playing video games in general, because right now I play a lot of fighting games on stream, but I'm not like improving at them. And I feel like the only time that I really do improve at fighting games is when I play them off stream. I guess I could do that on stream, but I would end up going pretty quiet and the chat would be kind of boring. So I haven't been doing that a lot on stream. How about you guys? Have you ever been to a local weekly event for a fighting game? Or not even a fighting game, for, it could be like a first-person shooting game, or it could be a puzzle game like Puyo Puyo or Tetris or whatever. Have you ever been to one of these events, and can you tell me what your first experience was like and whether you were nervous? I'm very keen to know, because people talk about it like, oh yeah, I just went down to my local, very casual, oh yeah, I had a few sets, I lost a few, I won a few, but oh man, I'm really weak at my combos. When I hear people talk like that, I'm like, I barely know any combos. Maybe if I'm not at your level, I shouldn't go at all. But from what I've experienced, wow, a lot of people were showing up, having not owned a game, not owning a PlayStation. I wrote this on Twitter recently. There's someone who I met who's currently a student, about to graduate and join the workforce, who doesn't own a PlayStation, doesn't own Street Fighter 5, but he travels 2 hours to get to the place in Tokyo to play. He plays from opening time to closing time, and then he takes the last train home, which is like another 2 hours, and so he still gets home like after midnight. So this student doesn't own an arcade stick, doesn't own a PlayStation, doesn't own the game, and can only practice like once or twice a week when they show up at fighting game events. And here I am getting nervous about whether I should practice my combos before I go to my first local fighting game event. I felt a little bit humbled. It was kind of like embarrassing in a way. Like, why was I nervous about not being the best when I show up, when other people are showing up and they don't even own the game? I'm like, right, what was I worried about? So not to say that everyone's gonna open you with welcoming arms. It's not a service to help people make friends. They've got apps for that. You can swipe left, you can swipe right if you want to meet people. More than likely, if you do show up to one of these events, you will end up making friends, whether you like it or not. But that's clearly, at least in Tokyo, not the point. The point is, we need a place to play this game, and we don't have an arcade for Street Fighter 5. Though, Street Fighter 5 is getting an arcade version, which is going to release in 2019. I don't know about in the West, but for sure, it's decided that they're going to be putting them at arcade game centers in Japan. I'm really keen to see how the atmosphere will change at this weekly event after it opens up at arcades. I don't think it will change. I think now that Red Bull has their gaming sphere thing, and it's like clearly very powerful promotion for their brand, I doubt that they would stop making these weekly events for people to play games, because there's still a lot of games that aren't in the arcades. For example, BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. So yeah, tell me about your first experiences going to real life events to play fighting games or whatever games you played, whether you were nervous or anxious, about going to such events for whatever reason. Maybe you don't know who to talk to, or you're afraid that you're not a stronger player, and whether those nervousnesses and anxieties turned out to be just misapprehensions, or did they turn out to be true? Actually, you went and nobody talked to you and no one played games against you. Who knows? I would like to know in reality what it was like for you. If you've got any questions about the community here in Tokyo, do leave them in the comments. I will reply to as many of them as I possibly can. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, share the links, and all that excellent stuff. And I will see you in the next NihongoGamer video, or stream, or tweet, or Discord. Or if you're on Patreon, I sometimes leave little photos and mini videos on Patreon, so do feel free to check me out there as well. I'll see you next time.